If the grief isn't bad enough, the cost will really hurt. The latest survey found that funeral poverty has risen 50% in 5 years. Some people end up in massive debt and others just don't have the money at all.
I was a 73-year-old sort of pensioner. I couldn't have been sort of liable for a loan or anything like that. And if you got in with loan sharks, God knows where I've ended up. But no, I just couldn't get money from anywhere.
The sad part is that you're backed into a corner. You don't have a choice because it's either you pay to do it or what? Leave your relative.
He died the 17th of December and his funeral was the 19th of February.
Quaker Social Action are a small charity that have set up several projects to deal with this rising problem.
The average cost of a simple funeral in London is about £3,600 because the cost of dying has risen by over 80% in the last 10 years. In fact, last year, the cost of dying rose 7 times more than the cost of living. There is a government grant from the Social Fund called the funeral payment, which you may be eligible for if you're on particular benefits. When that started in the late 1980s, it more or less covered the cost of a simple, basic funeral. That hasn't gone up since it started, so now only covers about 34%.
Percy Mawson got the grant when he buried his brother.
I came across a funeral director that was just a little under 7,000 because it was the £2,900 for the burial, the plot itself. Also, there were additional costs like the coffin, the director's fee. The grant was £1,900. That's all it was. In all, I was pretty close to 4,000 in debt because I had to take out loans for that.
So the grant leaves you in debt, but if you're a low-paid worker, you're not even entitled to it.
You can only access this government grant if you're on certain qualifying benefits. Now, of course, if you're working, if you're on minimum wage, then someone dies and you don't have £4,000 or £5,000 sitting around in the bank. So there's a huge number of people who are just not getting any help from this pot of money.
Pensioner Trish Harvey doesn't qualify for the government grant and had to organise the funeral of her cousin. So she was in for a nasty shock when she went to see the funeral director.
3,500, which I don't know, somebody told me it's gone up more than it now, so, because he's going back 18 months with him, bless him. I've never had enough money to save up or be lucky enough to sort of win anything. Just a 73-year-old pensioner, just doing the ordinary state pension. That's all the money I had in the world. Bless him, I mean, I'd have done anything for him. But you can't pull money out of thin air.
If, like Trish, you really don't have money, then you are entitled to a public health funeral. It costs you nothing, but you have no choice as to when or where the funeral takes place.
In the end, I mean, according to the woman that came around to me, she said it was a pauper's funeral. That's what they wrote in the paper. I didn't say them words, actually, but it was put in there that it was a pauper's funeral, and it had a cardboard coffin.
We've seen a definite increase in the number of people needing public health funerals. I think one of the issues for people is that most funeral directors nowadays require some money up front before they will go ahead. For a cremation, we're talking about needing £800, £1,000 before we're going ahead. If you wanted a burial, you could be looking at £3,000 before the funeral can go ahead.
Fiona works for Down to Earth, who are part of Quaker Social Action. They give advice to all those struggling to afford funerals.
We can do something called a meet at the crematorium. That would save you money. Most funeral directors would charge at least £250 per car. Most crematoriums would charge less if you have a service before 10 o'clock. And
she will give advice on how any of us can cut the cost by up to £1,000. Things like choose your crematorium carefully. Prices vary considerably. Price match funeral directors. They also vary and always ask what's the cheapest option.
We've launched something called the Fair Funerals Pledge, and that asks funeral directors to acknowledge that funerals can be really expensive and to be open and transparent about their prices.
Some funeral directors have already signed up, including Catherine Joy. She's quite new to the business and was shocked at some of the profit margins.
I couldn't believe how much the markup was on coffins. The profit margin was just unbelievable. Funeral directors drive around in their Bentleys, and it's the little old ladies that can't afford their husband's funeral that are paying for them. Years ago, before I was in the industry, I had to arrange my aunt's funeral, and my mother was sitting with me, and the lady was sitting in my aunt's lounge and said to my mother, "This is the last thing that you're ever going to do for your sister." And she just feels that you really didn't have any feelings for her whatsoever because you've chosen the cheapest coffin. I really think you should look through our coffin brochure and make a further decision and review the situation.
There is one option that saves money though, but you're hardly ever told about it. The direct cremation. It's the latest trend. David Bowie and Prince did it, and it was Catherine's idea.
I literally thought of it because I had so many people phoning me and saying to me, "I really, really don't want a religious service. I don't know what to do." And because I was asked the question so many times, I said, well, hold on a minute. What's to stop us doing a service where we literally return the ashes and nothing else? The deceased is placed in a coffin, taken to Golders Green and cremated. Nobody attends, the ashes are returned by courier, or the family can pick up the ashes themselves. The direct cremation is £809. That's including the cremation fee. We've taken them back to pubs where people have known they've been diagnosed with cancer, so they've known they're dying. They've put all their plans all into place, spoken to the landlord of the pub, said, look, I want a really good send-off. So I've ended up sending the ashes back to Public House. The pint of beer was waiting for him, and he was sat next to it for the whole of his wake.
Although that idea might not be for everyone, there is some hope though for those struggling to afford to bury their loved ones. There are people around who can advise on cost savings and professionals trying to make the whole business more affordable in the future.